Hey, what's up guys, BoHD here, and today is a very big day for Mac because Apple is officially ditching Intel for their very own custom SoC chip called the Apple M1 chip. So this chip is built on ARM, which is the basis of what powers Apple's iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch platforms. And the biggest thing that Apple's M1 chip has going for the Mac will be power efficiency and just much improved battery life. In fact, in my opinion, this is a generational leap in battery performance that's really only possible because of this new M1 chip. So before we get into the new M1 Macs, there's a few things you should know about the M1 chip that is powering these new Macs. First of all, it consists of an 8-core CPU with 4 high-efficiency cores and 4 performance cores. So you get a total of 8 cores, which Apple claims is the world's fastest. Well, they're actually claiming that the 4 performance cores are the fastest. They also say it offers the best CPU performance per watt of power of any laptop in its class. And in terms of graphics, it features an 8-core GPU that Apple claims is the world's fastest integrated graphics. You're going to notice a theme here. Typically, integrated graphics aren't as powerful as discrete graphics cards that we typically see in higher-end, like Windows laptops and even the higher-end MacBook Pro models. But Apple says the new M1 chip, it offers 2 times more graphics performance than the latest PC laptop chip and at 1/3 of the power. So once again, the M1 chip is no slouch in performance, at least according to Apple, but the big thing that really separates it from the Intel chips is its power efficiency and power consumption. Another thing to note is it features a neural engine just like the chips in Apple's iPhones and iPads with a 16-core design and 11 trillion operations per second. Also, we have Big Sur, which is the latest macOS version that will be coming to newer Macs actually later this week, I believe. And it will be optimized for the M1 chip, so you can wake up your Mac instantly, just like an iPhone or an iPad. And Apple claims that Safari running on a Mac with an M1 chip is 1.5 times faster at Java and almost 2 times more responsive than on an Intel machine. So overall, we're going to see system animations and navigation that's going to be buttery smooth and optimized thanks to Big Sur. Now, because the M1 chip is based on ARM and it doesn't use the Intel processors we've had in the past, like the i5 and i7 core processors, that means that many of the software applications typically available on Macs in the past, like Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom, will need to be updated to work. So that could take some time for developers to transition their apps and update them accordingly. So to help with that process, Apple is creating what they're calling universal apps, which will be rolled out starting next month and will let developers program their apps to support both Intel and ARM-based machines, just to at least get us through this transition process. And on top of that, Apple came out with basically an app called Rosetta 2, which is able to convert Intel apps to run on M1 Macs. But the caveat is they might not be able to perform as well, even though Apple claims that some Rosetta apps do actually perform even better than the native Intel versions. We're just gonna have to wait and see, I suppose. But all of the articles and reports that I've read seem to suggest that apps that are converted using Rosetta 2 will not be able to perform as well as the native Intel apps. So once again, this should only really be an issue in the short term until we get developers to natively support the new M1 chip. Basically, this is really just the beginning of a new era or a platform of Macs. The transition is going to take some time and it could be a little bit rough. Apple is pretty transparent about that. They did mention that in their event today. Adobe, for example, isn't going to have Photoshop available until early next year, hopefully sooner than later, but who knows what the actual timeline will be. But generally speaking, the long-term gain is looking pretty darn great, as in theory, you'll be able to run all the apps you have currently on your iPhone or your iPad on your Mac with the M1 chip. So that unlocks a ton of possibilities because there are over 2 million apps on the App Store. So if you can run some of those apps on your laptop, that will be huge. It's kind of like what Google's been able to do with their Chromebook line. Fairly recently, they updated the Chromebook or Chrome OS to support Android apps. So that unlocks a huge possibility because I can run home security apps on my laptop. I can check in and manage pretty much everything I can manage on my phone, on my laptop, well, you'll be able to do the same thing with Apple and its ecosystem. Okay, now as far as the hardware goes, Apple unveiled 3 new Macs, all of which, of course, will support this new M1 chip. So first, we have the new MacBook Air with M1. It features 3.5 times faster performance than the previous generation with 5 times faster graphics, according to Apple. So you'll be able to edit multiple streams of 4K ProRes video without dropping a single frame, once again, according to Apple. They even went as far as saying it's faster than 98% of PC laptops sold in the last year. That's pretty crazy. Now, there's also a 2 times faster SSD, and there's no fan for cooling. You just don't need it because of this new design of the chip. So that translates to a completely silent laptop, which will be great for a class setting, even though everyone's probably studying from home because of the pandemic. But still, pretty cool nonetheless. Definitely looking forward to benchmarks and real hands-on testing and all that fun stuff, hopefully coming later this month. But I will say the best feature, in my opinion, above the performance gains, because I think that Apple might be exaggerating some things here and there, is battery life gains. So Apple, which tends to be pretty accurate in estimating and showing off their battery performance, they claim that you'll be able to get 15 hours of web browsing battery life and 18 hours of video playback, which is 6 hours more than the previous MacBook Air. That's absolutely nuts. Like that's not just an incremental update. That is a generational leap, in my opinion. And it gets better with the next Mac product that I'm gonna tell you about. But before I do that, I think it is worth mentioning that Apple finally updated the FaceTime camera. So all those Zoom calls that we do now will benefit from that. It also packs a 13-inch Retina display, and we have Touch ID for unlocking security purposes and also paying for things via Apple Pay. And in terms of price, it starts at $999 or $899 if you're a student or a teacher. Okay, now if you want the same general form factor of a laptop, a pretty thin one at that, and you want even more power, Apple unveiled the 13-inch MacBook Pro with M1. So this machine, it offers 2.8 times faster performance than the previous MacBook Pro, which Apple says is 3 times faster than the best-selling Windows laptop in its class. It can play back 8K ProRes footage in full quality without dropping a single frame. It's also supposedly 11 times faster at machine learning, but once again, the biggest selling point, in my opinion, is the battery life. You can get 17 hours of web browsing and 20 hours of video playback on a single charge, which is 10 hours more than what you got before in the previous MacBook Pro. So it's insane. It's the longest battery life of a Mac ever. Like, that's crazy. It starts at about $1,300 or $1,200 if you're a student or a teacher. But I'm just sitting over here like really tempted to upgrade because I currently, like I wrote this little script for this video on my MacBook Pro, and I had to have it charged, plugged into my charger because my battery life is starting to drain real darn fast. So these battery life improvements that we see thanks to this new M1 chip is just nuts. And I don't know, I'm just really excited for it. And that's coming from a guy who's pretty neutral, grew up with Windows, fairly recently switched to Mac. So I don't know, I'm just impressed. Now we have one more Mac that was announced today, and that is the new Mac Mini with M1. This little desktop computer, it features 3 times faster CPU performance than the previous quad-core Intel version and 6 times faster graphics, while only about 1/10 of the size of a competing desktop Windows PC. We have a bunch of ports, including 2 USB-C ports and support for Thunderbolt and USB 4, and it can apparently support Apple's Pro Display XDR at full resolution. Best of all, it starts at just $699, so it's actually going to be the cheapest new Mac that you can buy with this new M1 chip. And I actually pre-ordered one, but I did pre-order the model with the extra 16 gigabytes of RAM because upon further research, I found that you cannot upgrade the RAM after the fact. So that's important to note because the base model features 8 gigabytes of RAM, which should be fine for most people, but if you plan on doing any sort of like photo editing, video editing, you're definitely gonna want that extra RAM, and you can't upgrade it after the fact. So it's probably worth pulling the trigger now with that extra RAM. But overall, I think Apple did a great job with this event. The Mac line is really the core of Apple, so it's neat to see the future of Mac and how Apple envisions its products and how everything will really be able to work together more seamlessly than ever before, at least when everything's said and done. Obviously, the transition is going to take some time, so if you're planning on picking up one of these machines to do a bunch of like photo editing or video editing, especially with Adobe apps, you might want to hold off a little bit until next year. But for web browsing and content consumption, the battery life gains, man, they are going to be top notch. They are a generational leap. So I'm hoping the processing power isn't too much worse than what Intel's chips have offered in the past. We're really just going to have to wait and see. And reviewers like myself are going to have to get our hands on these products, test them out, run them through some benchmarks, and just see how they stack up with the competition, as well as, Apple's previous MacBooks. With that said, guys, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this new M1 chip. Do you think it's, it's the future of Macs? Let me know what you're thinking in the comment down below. As always, I'm BoHD from PhoneDag.com. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you right back here in the next one. See ya.